There's something which confuses me about modern farming practices, and that is farmers don't, for the most part, grow their own seed. Whatever crops they grow, when they harvest it, they sell all of the harvest, and then the next season they buy seed from somebody else. This is a very interesting situation because it means that they're never growing seed which is adapted to the way that they farm. Whatever subtle changes there are, and they could be significant, but say say you're buying from another farmer just down the street, right? So it's similar climate, similar whatever, similar soil and all of that. There's going to be subtle differences. Whatever differences are in the practices in the soil and whatever, water availability, nutrient availability, soil microbiome, all that bullshit. That seed is going to be adapted to the other guy's land. It's not going to be adapted to yours. So you're never going to get ideal crop yields. It's not possible. You're also, the people who supply seed tend to focus heavily on making sure that it is grown in a very certain way, and we get only the healthiest individual plants. We only harvest seed from the healthiest individual plants, and we try to choose the largest or whatever, usually largest or most massive or something like that, seeds from what we do collect. This induces specialization. This induces specializations which make it, generally are going to make it so that the plants are less broadly adaptable. Because it's going to, you're basically choosing the individuals that perform best under these very specific conditions. What you should really be looking for is very broad range of conditions. So you want to maintain in your mix, in your genetic diversity here, you want to maintain seed from plants that grew at the edge of the field and didn't get watered right, and they were able to produce some seed even though their conditions were pretty suboptimal. And you want to keep that seed in there so that you get this gene mixture as you keep growing your crops, right? Collect the seed and then just kind of randomly mix it in so that when it gets planted out, so you get this seed from the edge of the field that wasn't doing so well, and the next season it gets planted in a much better spot randomly, and now it's going to breed with seeds from plants grown from seeds that were under more optimal conditions, and now you're going to get that resiliency back in with everybody else, and you're doing this in a natural way. This is the way we should be doing it. Focusing on very, very specific criteria in a lab or whatever the fuck, however they're doing it. The commercial seed sellers, however they're doing it, and there's multiple ways that they do it, I'm aware of this. It's not optimal for anyone who's actually going to be planting that seed, right? This is interesting because, yeah, the way that I farm is, not that I'm like the most experienced or knowledgeable person about this in the world. Of course I'm not. But just the general approach to it seems very strange to me. Having to constantly buy your seed. One, I don't want to do that. I want to ideally be able to buy seed for something once and then have it do reasonably well the first season or so, and then continue with multiple generations of that same seed from that same seed, right? So you get adaptations to my land, to my farming practices, and I deliberately will take, as soon as I have enough of it, I will take seed from, sun-loving plants, and I'll plant it kind of all over the place, including in shady areas. And then when it harvests, and those individuals that grew in the shadier areas that didn't do so well, I'll specifically harvest that seed and mix it in so that the next time I plant, the ones that had that poorer environment get to interbreed with the ones under the more ideal circumstances, so that whatever epigenetic and or genetic adaptations that those individuals that were grown in suboptimal conditions came up with get promoted as like a fallback option and maintained as a fallback option in the future generations. And this makes it more robust. And what happens is, over a few seasons, the soil quality or the lighting or whatever doesn't matter as much. You see them, it still matters, of course, right? Because you can't just wipe out that adaptation, that feature, just, in a few generations. But you can definitely see that you get stronger individuals in the less optimal situations after just a few seasons, just by deliberately breeding them this way. And this helps develop things like drought tolerance and or like another one that I do is, I actually have a tomato plant right now, right? It's January. It's January. There's no reason there should be a tomato plant still alive at this point. And I planted it late. I think I planted it in October or really late September. It was a very weird time to plant tomatoes, but I just tried it. I was just curious. Like, I think I planted maybe 5 or 6 tomato seed, and I just wanted to see if any of them would sprout, and one of them did, and it's already produced 2 tomatoes. In December, it produced 2 tomatoes. And it has 5 or 6 berries on it now, little green tomatoes on it right now. I don't know if the plant will be able to grow those out to maturity and ripen. I'm not sure, but I absolutely plan on taking those 2 tomatoes that did ripen and planting their seed along with seed from that same cultivar this coming probably late March, something like that. This next planting season that's appropriate for tomato, so that resiliency to cold actually is pushed into the gene pool of the seed that I keep. It would be quite nice to be able to get tomato over a longer period of the year. That I would not complain about that. And it's a good tasting tomato. They're small, they're not that big, but they have a nice flavor to them. It's a nice rich flavor. So it's not like it's a shit tomato. It's a decently good tomato. The plants are fairly small. They're so they don't take up a lot of space. They don't take up a lot of water. They're pretty resilient already to drought and things like that. You can grow them. This individual cultivar you can grow in relatively low light. It does pretty well in a range of situations. So I imagine that was on its side for this late planting, but I was quite amazed because I've actually in previous years I tried this, something like this, and even when it didn't freeze, the tomato, the same cultivar, was lost, so it died in the cold. So it's not, this cultivar isn't specifically capable of handling these conditions. It's that this individual figured something out. It has some genetic or epigenetic adaptations which are allowing it to do this, and I would like to preserve that if possible, and convey it on to future generations of tomatoes. But at the same time, I don't want it to specialize. I specifically want to make it more of a generalist, right? I want to avoid specialization as much as possible. And this, of course, like if I were to, grow this out, produce lots of seed, and give some of that seed to somebody else, they, on their land with their farming practices and their climate, may have different results from me. But I'm not those people. My farming practices, my land, and my climate are what they are. I want my plants to be able to do the best that they can under my conditions. So it's most appropriate to maintain my own population of seed, my own cultivars, my own strains of these plants. And I don't understand why mainstream farming doesn't operate this way, because for many reasons, operating the way that it does conventionally is suboptimal. It's more expensive, for one. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know. And like looking around at, looking at what people talk about, what farmers talk about, and what people advising farmers talk about. They never talk about this, right? They'll talk about things like the phosphorus paradox and handling nitrogen with cover crops and maintaining soil moisture with cover crops and things like that. And all myriad things which are all, great and useful, but not this. At least not in this way, not the way that I'm thinking of it. And I find that interesting. Maybe there's something I'm missing. That's entirely possible, and I'm just I don't know what I'm doing. That is, of course, that is possible, but I think that's probably not the case, of course, which is why I do what I do. Um, but I don't know. That contrast between the way that I'm thinking about it and the way that it's conventionally done, I think, is at least an interesting thing to consider.